Hello, my name is Tim Saulnier, and I am the Director of Financial Aid here at UMW. And I'm here with Alicia.
Hi, my name is Alicia Tisdale, and I'm one of the assistant directors here with the UMW's Financial Aid Office.
And I'll be going through a PowerPoint presentation. And then Alicia will be helping answer any questions that you have along the way. So just type them in the chat and she'll try to answer them as we go. And at the end, if we still have questions or we haven't answered any of those, we'll take some question and answer then as well. So I'm just going to begin and go from here. So just to start off, we are located in Lee Hall on campus in the second floor, and we're part of the Student Service Center. So we always list our counterparts, which is the Office of Student Accounts, because the Financial Aid Office works very close and hand in hand with both offices together. So this is our email as well as their email and our contact information, which I'll share at the end as well. So sort of next steps. The next part of the process of where you're going to be is once you've made a decision, is FERPA. We'll go over where are you now, accessing your financial aid through portals, UMW scholarships, student employment, other payment methods, the e-bill and Eagle Pay. So just quick go over, because both the offices work together seamlessly, there are some separation. So the Office of Financial Aid, what we do is we award and process federal, state, and institutional financial aid. We manage the UMW Foundation Scholarship, which is those scholarships come from completing the scholarship application, and we handle student employment. The Office of Student Accounts, they handle all the billing, any payment plans that you sign up for. They process all the prepaid educational programs, the 529s, et cetera. If you have third-party payments, they receive all those things. If you're a Virginia resident and you are part of you're eligible for VMS DEP program, that's also through, mostly through their office. So information access for FERPA. So when students are in high school, obviously the parents have access to all that information, but once the student comes to college and the university, that right of access stays with the student. And so in order to be able to discuss certain information, the student would need to complete a FERPA form. For us, that form is actually online, so they fill it out online, and it basically tells what we can speak to about the student's account. So that's financial aid information, grade information, and other things. So we call it delegated access in the financial aid office. So basically the student is delegating access to another individual. So it could be a grandparent, could be a parent, just depending on who they want to release that information to. Authorized payer, that is actually used for the student accounts office, and so they are different, and it would be two separate forms. Basically, student accounts is authorizing who you'll let see the bill. So a lot of times you may have a grandparent that might be helping out with a bill and you want them to get a copy of that. So what the authorized payer gives you access to is the bill, receive email reminders, you can make payments through Eagle Pay, and you can sign up for payment plans, etc. Delegated access, it allows our office, the Office of Financial Aid, to discuss financial aid with a third party, discuss final grades, any financial aid information essentially. So sometimes when a parent calls and we don't have this on file, we can just only speak in generalities. And so without this access on our system. So you want to make sure that you get that done. So when you call, we can answer all your questions. So the timeline of where we are. So we're past this, but where it starts is the priority deadline to complete the FAFSA was February 1st. The reason we do have a priority deadline is some of our state grants and some of the federal grants are not unlimited. And so we award based on the time in which we received your FAFSA until a fund runs out. SEOG, which is Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, that really runs out first, but a lot of times we are filling what that would have placed on an award if you were eligible for that. Only Pell students are eligible for that grant, but we're usually replacing that need with something else anyway. So not to worry if you get it one year but don't the next. We're usually replacing that aid. State grants, so if you are from Virginia, that's the biggest one that we can potentially run out of. And so that's why we have a priority deadline. But note that if you haven't filed the FAFSA yet, you still can do that. We always recommend that you do it as soon as possible. But you have until essentially you can complete it as long as you are currently enrolled. And we always say, give us time to process it within that term. So if for whatever reason you didn't feel you needed it now, but something happened later in the year, say it's the end of November, you could fill it out then if needed. The next step in the process is once we've received the FAFSA, we would send you award letter information. So if you have all been admitted, deposited, at this point, you should have received an award letter. If you completed a FAFSA, it should have been detailed with FAFSA information as well as your merit scholarships from admissions. If you didn't complete a FAFSA, you would have received a award letter that just had information containing admissions information, like what they had notified you of. This is the time when students have deposited to start completing that delegated access, that authorized payer. If you've deposited, sort of the next timeline is if you completed the FAFSA and you were selected for verification. Not all students are. Roughly 30% of all students would be selected. So you may never be selected in your 4 years if you fill out the FAFSA each year, and you may be selected multiple times. If selected, we're going to ask for your copies of your 2021 tax information. So if you use the IRS data retrieval tool on the FAFSA, which is basically you're transferring your IRS information to the FAFSA, we're not going to be needing all tax information. Usually we would just ask for your parental W-2s. We have a verification deadline of June 1. It's not so much a deadline that if you don't complete it by that time, you're not unable to complete it. We just need time to be able to complete the paperwork so everything's finalized when bills go out in July. And so sort of the next step in the process after that is finalized is if a student wants to accept or decline their student loans, they can do that at this time. Once a student accepts loans, they'd be required to complete a couple of additional actions. Payment plan strategy. So that's sort of the next one. So families and students can go about many ways of coming up with a way to pay. That's just one option. You can complete a Parent Plus loan, private loan. And this timeline is really around end of June, July. We don't recommend anyone applying for a Parent Plus loan or a private loan now. The reason is we actually haven't set actual tuition costs yet. We've estimated what they will be, but because the House and the Senate in Virginia has not settled on a budget yet, which we then use to have our Board of Visitors set tuition rates. Those aren't finalized. And so they should be finalized hopefully this month, if not next month. And then we'll be in the system setting all that information up so that bills can go out in July. But along with that, that way you actually know what you need to borrow. So we usually say wait until late June, July to apply for these. And then we ask that students agree to receive electronic consent for emails because that's how we send the majority of our communication. Excuse me a second. Oops. Move this. There we go. Sorry about that. I couldn't see the top of the screen because of the toolbar. Okay, so all of you should have received a personalized financial aid video as part of your award letter. So you should have received a text message, but you can actually also see that in the student submissions portal. If you have not been able to see that yet, it's a video explaining all the different types of awards you received. I'm going to try to provide as much information there as possible because sometimes it's a lot easier to watch a video than read all the text with what you've received. So next is accessing your financial aid through your Banner portal. And so what we're showing here is once you get into your financial aid portal, you'll start at the home section. If a student accepted their loans, they would have this first requirement that you're seeing, which is your direct loan entrance counseling. And it will show it's outstanding requested. It will stand out because of the color, as you can see here. And if we need anything else from you, so if for whatever reason we needed another document from you, you would also see this information here. So it's important to review. This is after a student's completed everything we've asked for. So you would see the information here. Like I said, it shows the consent for electronic communication has been completed. They've completed a master promissory note. The reason you'll see more than one note regarding that in this instance is it lists it for both the sub and the unsubsidized loan. Some students have the ability to receive both, some will receive one. And so that's why you'll see it listed twice. This individual had a Parent Plus loan, and so you also see that the Parent Plus loan was completed here. But anyway, this is where you'll see that it's in green to show that it's in good standing. We don't need anything. The award offer, this is where you're actually going to see your award information. On this little screen, you'll see that we basically expect all students to be full-time. That information isn't going to change. It's just expected. So even if a student decided they wanted to go full-time, that information won't change. We also list the housing status. So depending on how you said you were going to live on the FAFSA, we pull that directly from there, or what from admissions is provided if you did not fill out the FAFSA. And then the expected family contribution, that's the figure that comes from completing the FAFSA. In this same screen, as I said, this is where your award information is. You're going to scroll down. It will have a brief cost of attendance information. And then it's going to list scholarships and grants first. So those are all of the funds that you do not have to pay back. So the merit scholarship you receive through admissions will show up here, a state grant potentially. This individual had a Pell Grant on the screen. So that's what that will show. It will take the cost of attendance, minus your grants and scholarships and give you a net cost before we consider any loans. And then we add the self-help options. You'll see the self-help options after that. So self-help is if you're going to do a work study job or student employment, or if you decide to have loans. So a sub or an unsubsidized loan, a Parent Plus loan, an alternative loan would show up here. So we sort of break that out so you know that what is the free money that you're not having to pay back, and then the funds that you potentially would have to pay back. Obviously, work is like any other job that you have. You'll work on campus and you'll receive those funds directly in a paycheck. So moving on to verification, I touched on it a little bit briefly, but if you're selected for verification, whether it be dependent or independent, the forms are on our financial aid page under the form section. The general information that we're requesting is potentially tax information, tax transcript, if the data retrieval tool was not used, 2021 wages, so that could be a W-2 or a 1099 depending on the situation, and then a verification of non-filing statement for parents and independent students if they did not file taxes. So dependent students, we don't generally ask for a non-filing statement. We sort of assume that you may not have worked as a dependent. UMW scholarship. So in addition to the merit scholarship, the Taking Flight you may have received, and other awards through admissions, we have about $2 million more in foundation scholarships that we provide to students. The application to complete is at umw.edu/scholar. You can't start this application until you've deposited, but decision day is May 1. And so we generally give students 2 weeks after, usually when students are making their final decision or have the ability to make their final decision, to complete the application. So no one's impacted if they decided to wait until May 1 to make a decision. So it opens February 1st each year and closes 5/15 each year. A large majority of this, there are some scholarships that do close earlier than the May 15th deadline. We do have a few in there for April 1st. Just know that those scholarships are really for our returning students. They're really departmental scholarships. So if you want to be a historic pres major as an example, and there's a historic pres scholarship that has a April 1 deadline, it's really because they're waiting till you've declared a major, you've been in some of those major classes. Those professors know the students that are applying for those scholarships. So don't fret if you see a few with an earlier deadline. Generally speaking, those aren't going to be awarded to new students. They're really for returning students. So you'll be potentially applicable next year as you've potentially declared a major, etc. So just so you understand those. UMW scholarships that exist. So we have the admissions merit scholarships. So those are based on your academic achievement in high school and potentially if you submitted scores to UMW. They're awarded during the admissions process and you have to maintain certain requirements. So generally renewal is you have to be full-time and then you meet a incremental GPA that will review yearly. The UMW General Scholarship, that's a need-based program, so you would have to have completed the FAFSA to receive this. And it basically fills up any need that we determined that you had, that if a merit scholarship didn't fill that gap, or if you were a Pell Grant recipient and you received a state grant and there was still some need that we wanted to meet, that's where that scholarship comes in. A lot of times this scholarship is eaten up by state grants. So some students will have it, some won't, just depending on criteria. And then the departmental scholarships that I are briefly mentioned previously, those are mainly awarded to the upperclassmen. The main number of departmental scholarships that are awarded to first-year students are in the music department. So private outside scholarships. So there's lots of opportunity to apply for these outside scholarships. So community organizations, corporations, high schools, parents, employers. A lot of times we don't think of our company benefits that we have. We're thinking about health insurance, retirement, but it's a good thing for you to take a look at what your employer offers. It's just something that we don't typically think of when we're taking on a new job. So the scholarship is not added to the student's account. That's an important thing to notice until the actual check is received by the university. So student accounts would say, if you have $1,000 bill and you have $1,000 scholarship, you would have to pay the $1,000 and then be reimbursed once the scholarship check is actually applied to the account. If we do receive a letter that you are receiving an outside scholarship, we will apply it to your account on the financial aid side, and you can see that we've received that information, and it would show up in your financial aid portal. We always ask that if you do have any of these outside scholarships, whether it's from a high school or whatever, we ask that you add your student ID number and your name when the scholarship's sent to us. If they can just print it somewhere on the letter or on the actual check, it's very helpful. There are many instances where we've had students who receive a scholarship check and their name is exactly the same as another student attending. And then it makes it more difficult to award. We get it resolved, but I'm just saying it can slow the process up. Student employment. We have approximately 700 on-campus jobs. The current process is students would look through jobs on UMW Careers. We are actually transitioning away from this current system. I'm not exactly sure when we're going to go live with that system, so we may still be using Careers in the beginning of the year, or we may have transitioned to PageUp, which is the new HR system that we'll be using. Currently, minimum wage is $12 an hour. For first-year students, we always recommended taking on a job that's about 10 hours a week. And then usually sophomore, junior, seniors, we're fine with them doing more, so roughly 15 hours a week. We don't want to overtax students as they first start out, and we want them to get acclimated to campus, their routines, etc. So that's why we usually recommend on the lower end when they're starting out. Jobs are across campus in various offices, disciplines. So the science department has around 120 students that they employ as an example. They're helping out with labs, etc. Our financial aid office usually has about 5 or 6 students a year that help us answer the phones, answer questions, filing paperwork, etc. And they get a lot of good work experience. So other examples are student services, the library, the bookstore. We also have some community service jobs. So, and that's part of a federal requirement for a work study program. So we do have some potential teachers that actually go into the elementary schools in the local area, and they help out with classrooms. And we also, in the past, have had some math tutoring at the high school down the street. So those are some of the opportunities available. E-bill notifications. So this is information actually comes from the student accounts office. So as I said earlier, you'll want to set up authorized payer to whoever wants to get the bill. The bills go out mid-July, so roughly around July 15th. For the fall semester, spring bills go out mid-November, and summer bills go out mid-April. Students are able to set up to 5 parents, guardians, or whomever they want for authorized payers in order to receive an email. Usually 5 is plenty. Payment methods. So there's lots of different options. So student loans, whether they be federal, which if you fill out the FAFSA and you're eligible, you're guaranteed to receive a certain amount each year. There's private, and there's parental loans. In addition, there's the Virginia College Savings Plan. So if you did VPEP or VEST, the prepaid, the amount is depending on if you're fully vested, then obviously you're fine. If you didn't fully vest, then it would be prorated based on the percentage that you earned. Out-of-state savings plans as well, we accept those. You'd want to reach out. A good time in June is to reach out to your 529 provider if you have one, just to see what their process is. There's also post 9/11 and other veterans benefits. So obviously we handle standard GI Bill information through the VA, but also if you a Virginia resident and were disabled, you might have the ability to apply for VMS DEP benefits in the state of Virginia. Then there's direct payments through the Eagle Pay portal, and then payment plans. So payment plans actually open in May. And so you may not know what your bill is until July, but you can have a good estimate based on the financial aid award we've provided and an estimate of costs. So if you overestimate, the payment plan will actually be automatically adjusted down. And if you underestimate, it would be adjusted up if you didn't have other payment arrangements. So accepting loans. So federal direct loans are in the student's name. They do not require credit worthiness. And the maximum amounts are set based on the number of credits they've completed towards their degree. So as a freshman, which is usually a first-year student, it's 5,500, then 6,500, and then 7,500. If a student is independent or the parent applied for a Parent Plus loan and for whatever reason they were denied, then they have increased loan limits of 4,000 first and second year, and then 5,000 the junior and senior year. In this scenario, I just throw this out here because we do have more students that take early college classes and may potentially come in as a first-year student, but they have 60 credits completed because they have an associate's. They would fall under the junior level for actual amounts. But that information, we would have traditionally awarded you as a first-year student with a 5,500 amount. And if we find out about the 60 credits associate's degree later on, we would increase that aid if needed. These loans are accepted in the financial aid portal. So you would need to complete an entrance counseling and a master promissory note. The entrance counseling is basically takes about 20 minutes to complete. It's sort of a brief overview. What is the loan? How do I go about paying it back? Some good budgeting information. And that is completed at studentaid.gov. The master promissory note is also completed there. So that takes about 5 minutes to complete. It's basically acknowledging that you agree back to pay back the note. And the student has to provide a couple of different resources. So contacts that one can live with at the same address and the other has to live somewhere else. So usually most people put a parent, and then if they have a grandparent or someone else, sibling that maybe already graduated that lives at a different address. It's only used in the event that they can't get a hold of the student later on. Fixed interest rate, it's based on a 10-year standard repayment. Interest rates for this year are 4.99 and 6.54 for unsubsidized. Just know that These rates are not what they'll be when students actually attend. The rates are set every July, and so July 1, they'll change, and they're based on what's going on in the current economy. So my guess is they would increase a little bit, but it really depends on what's going on in the economy. As interest rates technically go up or down, these sort of go up and down as well. Alternative private loans. So we have a tool at elmselect.com. You basically select our university, and then you would have a list of lenders that are available to you. We always recommend looking at a couple different options. If you are going to go with an alternative private loan, some of them have better interest rates than others, depending on your situation. So I always tell people to apply for a couple different options and do it within the same time frame, so there's not multiple credit checks hitting you. So these loans can be in the parent or the student name. They can be fixed or adjustable rate. And so we mostly see fixed interest rates, but adjustable rates can be there depending on what's best for you. And the repayment terms also vary quite a bit. So you can see 5, 8, 10, 12, 15-year repayment options, depending on what you want. And then you have the ability to go right into repayment, make interest-only payments, or defer until after you graduate. I generally see the best interest rate if you make interest-only payments. If you go right into repayment, I think the interest rate's higher because they just don't make as much money. That's my guess. I don't really know, but that's my logical guess. Also, with this tool, you can compare a bunch of different lenders. They all have different borrower benefits, so you might want to take a look at one that might work best for you. So Discover used to have a good grade benefit, so you would submit your grades, you'd be able to get a little bit back on the loan that you took. Some of them have a graduation benefit, like once you graduate, you can get a reduction. So you just want to look at the different options available to you and the borrower benefits and see if this is an option that you would want to use. I'll say personally, when I've used this just a few years ago, when I applied to 2 different lenders, I got a 5% interest rate and a 9%. Obviously, I took the 5%, but so that's why I always recommend that you do a couple different options, because you just don't know what's going to work best for you and how they rate you. The Parent Plus loans, so this has to be in the parent's name. It is a fixed interest rate and it's a 10-year repayment. You can defer until after the student graduates, but you can always make payments while the student's in school. There's no prepayment penalties on either of these loans, both the alternative loan and the Parent Plus loan. This one's in the parent's name. It is based on credit. The current interest rate is 7.54. As I said, with the other direct loans, that will update July 1 as well. So they haven't released that information yet, but it should be coming out shortly. These are deferred until after the student graduates, and can be a very good option as well. The credit check is good for 180 days. That's also the other reason why that we recommend that you wait until the end of June, July. We also recommend that you borrow for the year, so both fall and spring term, so it's split in half, and you don't borrow for each semester at a time, just in case something comes up. But with the credit check lasting for 180 days, if you do need to borrow anything additional for the spring semester, as an example, there won't be any issue. Veterans benefits. So there's the Virginia Veterans Benefits, which we call VMS DEP. Those that qualify for VMS DEP start by applying on the Virginia Department of Veteran Services. The tuition benefit is processed through student accounts. Only the book stipend is processed through financial aid. And so not everyone qualifies for this portion. So you have to have I think it's 100% to be qualified for this benefit. So you'd want to apply there. You have to apply each year, each semester, I believe, to certify the number of hours you're going to be in so that we can receive that funding. Then there are post 9/11 benefits. So you will apply on the VA website. Once you apply there and you've made a decision where you're going, that information, you're going to go in and send that to the school. So you would send that to UMW. Once we receive that, you'll then want to go out to our registrar's office and complete the registrar's form. It's a quick little form that basically says I'm coming here, I'm planning to be full-time, etc. And then the registrar will be able to complete the certification process once we have those two things. Payment plans. So you want to sign up through Eagle Pay portal. Parent must be an authorized payer so they can receive the bill. Plans they're available through Nelnet Campus Commerce. This is just our vendor that we use. As I said earlier, the plans open in late May. So if you want to spread your payments over a longer period of time, this allows you to do so. But you can also sign up later. You don't have to decide May. You can just do June. You can do July. But the number of payments shrinks the later you sign up. Spring plans open up in mid-October, and you want to sign up early to maximize the number of payments available. The cost to participate is $40. If you wait until the very last moment to sign up for a payment plan, usually in August, there's fewer payments and they do charge $60. The payment is automatically deducted the 5th of each month, and UMW will review your account. So if, as I said earlier, if you underpay, it will auto adjust later in the semester. If you overpay, it will adjust down and just take less out. It will notify you if they need to increase it, and vice versa if they're going to reduce it. What is a refund? So refunds are if you ask to borrow more than it costs to attend UMW. So if you look at your cost of attendance, depending on if you're on campus or off campus, it'll be a little bit different. But if you're on campus, an example, you have direct costs that we charge. So tuition, fees, a meal plan, housing, that will all be on there. Things that you may incur, we also provide in there. So if you need to buy a laptop your first year, books are in there. So we set aside $1,200 for books for their first year. But the major classes that you're taking or gen eds can vary. So the cost of those books could be different. If you're taking a heavy science, you may incur a little bit more than if you're taking English literature, which you can have, the books might be cheaper as an example. So it just depends. And so if you borrow up to your full cost of attendance, as an example, you'll potentially receive something back because you don't have $30,000 in charges because some of those were miscellaneous, transportation expense, et cetera. So we build about $4,000 of what I call fluff. So you may incur these costs, you may not, but you'd be incurring them directly, you wouldn't be billed for them. And so if you borrow up to the full amount, could potentially receive a refund. If you receive a refund, we recommend that you sign up for direct deposit. So get a check, or if you don't have checks, you can look up on your bank to see their routing number and what your checking account or your savings account number is. So you can put that information in there. I'll be honest with you, we had to return free money that we sent to students this year in the amount of, the highest amount that I had was $3,000. So there was a student that lost out on $3,000 of free grant money because they didn't set up their direct deposit. They got a check, they never cashed it, they never picked it up, etc. So we get those funds back and we award it to other students. But that's why we really drill and recommend that you set up direct deposit. It speeds up the process. We don't have to try and reach out to you multiple different ways to get you to cash the check. So it's important that you do this. If you work on campus, you have to do direct deposit. But if you don't, it's up to the student to complete that. So if you don't have direct deposit and you live on campus, we're going to mail the check to the post office. And so you would have to go to the campus post office and you'd have to show your ID to be able to get that check. It basically say you'd have a package and the package is actually your check. So once again, I'm going to reiterate, we really need students to sign up for direct deposit. It's the best and a most efficient way for you to receive your funds. Satisfactory academic progress. This is just a quick reminder that the financial aid office, if you're receiving federal funds, we are required to maintain these funds. So you need to maintain a certain GPA and progress in a timely manner. We check this progress at the end of the year, so at the end of the spring semester. So you must complete 70%, meet an overall GPA, and then this last one that most students shouldn't hit this until their 5th or 6th year. So basically, the Fed is saying that we're only really want to provide funding for up to 6 years or 150% of the program. If for whatever reason you don't stay on track for any of these programs, a student potentially could be suspended from receiving financial aid. There is an appeals process available, but we just make you aware of that, we need students to do well and stay on time and complete it in a timely manner. So once again, I'm just going to go over these are the hours that we're in the building, 8 to 5. This is the finaid@umw.edu is our email. Also our website and our office line if you need to reach out to us, as well as the Office of Student Accounts. So do you have any questions?
I think we've gotten all the questions that was in the chat, Tim. Also, I also put, he went back to the page, also in the chat, I put our office where we're located and our hours. And also there's the email address and telephone number. So the question was asked, why don't the out of campus, and I'm assuming it's off-campus student, receive any state grant? And off-campus student, they do receive state grants.
So I just want to make sure, is that out of state or off campus?
It's okay, off campus. It's off campus. They do receive state grants.
So depending on the way we award state grants in Virginia is it's more convoluted. Unfortunately, it's not a straight, if this is your expected family contribution, this is what you receive. The state asks us that we look at, okay, this is your cost. This is any aid that we know you're receiving. So your merit scholarship, your Pell Grant, we have to include, minus your ESC, those things. So what we know is your remaining need. And then we use a chart to award based on that information. So students who have a expected family contribution of over 15,000, both on and off, aren't going to receive anything. And then depending on your cost, so if you're living with your parents, you have a reduced cost potentially. So you're going to have a much lower EFC to be able to be considered for state grants in that scenario. So I think I saw, where do we apply for grants? So you don't, the way you apply for a state grant or federal grant is you complete the FAFSA. That's our process. If you complete the FAFSA, we're going to take the information, we combine it with the emissions information, and then we're going to award you. And if you are eligible, you would have automatically been given a state grant. And then they actually show up in the financial aid portal under my award information. And they should show up at the top of the sort of grants and scholarship section.
Another question, Tim, do you need to be a US citizen to receive federal loans? Permanent residents can also get loans, or no?
You have to be there are certain statuses that you are eligible and there are certain statuses that are not. So when you complete the FAFSA, generally what happens is if you have an alien registration number, you put that on there, you are an eligible non-citizen. If you meet the criteria that they say, then you're eligible. Generally speaking, if you fall into that category, the Department of Ed usually selects you to have that information verified. So we usually are asking for documentation. So it really depends on someone's status, and I can't say without knowing the specific documentation a student has. But generally speaking, if you completed the FAFSA and you were able to complete it, we usually verify that information if you are an eligible non-citizen.
Do we have any more questions?
Yes, you can make a deposit at any time from now until orientation. We will accept it any way that you would like to send it. So when is a good time to apply for campus jobs? You really want to look at August, at the beginning of, or I should say at the end of August, once school starts. A lot of the departments aren't up and running. So some of the all year round departments are up and running, but when I talk about faculty, they're on contract. So a lot of them aren't starting until August. And so all the jobs don't really become available usually until September is usually when you'll see the most postings, end of August, September. So that's the time frame when you'd want to start looking for a job. So the next question is, once you accept federal loans through the Banner portal, the student can then go to complete the entrance counseling and MPN. You can technically complete the entrance counseling and the master promissory note first. Just know that we can't load that information just yet. We're waiting for our systems provider to upload a patch that the feds have to send them so that we can start uploading that information. So if you logged in now and you didn't see your MPN or your master or your entrance counseling completed in our system, even if you've done it, that would be why. You'll start to be able to see that in late May, that if you've completed it, we've brought that into our system. But you can do it in any order.
Okay, we did a housing deposit. How much is the initial tuition deposit?
So the deposit is $550, $300 for enrollment, $250 for housing. And the $300 enrollment deposit, just so you know, that would actually be applied to your first bill.
I think that's all the questions we have in the chat. I wanted to also add I think I got a lot of questions about Eagle Pay. You will be receiving an email. Usually they send it out in mid-May, letting you know that the payment plan is open and you are able to begin to sign up. Okay, and we have another question, but the housing deposit will not be applied to the first bill. And that answer is no, it's not applied to the first bill. It's actually held until you are graduated, and if there's no problems, then you will receive a full refund for the housing deposit.
Or if you decide to live off campus. So
Yeah.
whenever you decide to depart campus housing, if there are no issues with the room, then they would refund the housing deposit in full. Any other questions? Well, if there's no other questions, I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. If you are coming this weekend, we look forward to seeing you. We've had some great weather lately, and so hopefully we have great weather this weekend. And we look forward to seeing everyone in the fall. So if you do have any other questions that you think of after this, feel free to email our FinAid@UMW email box, and we'll be glad to get back to you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.